thankful that you guys were all so patient and waiting for me to get this up. It has been like 5 days of insanity. You wouldn't think so, because you're like, how much can go wrong while you're at home? Well, apparently a lot. Anyways, everything's good, everything's fine, everything's settled, and we're gonna lecture off of the PowerPoint. So I came in today so that I could walk you through that PowerPoint. You guys miss this classroom? I know I do. I miss your faces in here. I miss your smells. Yeah, I know that's weird. You guys stink, but you know, it's what it is. I hope you all are staying safe. I hope you are keeping up with communications from your friends and family. I hope you've reached out to somebody who you maybe don't talk to too much, but they perhaps need to hear a voice. I want you to think about that person, and if you think you might be that person, reach out to somebody. It doesn't hurt. You know, just say, hey, wondering how you were doing. Don't have their number? Throw it up on the Google Classroom. On the Google Classroom. Throw it up on the stream. Tag them. You know, it can't do any harm to anyone. And I really, really, really love the stories that you're sharing with me. It really makes me feel like we're together in a way that we can't be right now due to the pandemic. This is our 3rd week of official school. This is our 6th week of quarantine. It's heavy. I got to see some people. I was walking down my street and I got to see some people. It's a really dangerous place to walk, but there's not much else you can do, you know, except walk where it's dangerous. And that's been pretty cool. The teachers and I, or some of the teachers and I, are reading a book together. It's a wonderful book that I cannot recommend for you guys because it's completely inappropriate. You all know how that is. But it's really neat to be able to read that with the teachers and to share your excitement about some books with other people who might be feeling the same way. So, you know, I encourage you, if you've got a book that's just silly, you know, it's nothing that has to be academic, it's nothing that has to be heavy. You don't have to analyze why they chose purple curtains. What was that color significant for? Or you can, but if you've got some friends that you'd like to talk to them, but you don't have anything to talk about because there's nothing going on in your life, you guys read a book together. Read chapters. Say, hey, I'm going to read chapter 3 today. Anybody else want to read it with me and we can talk about it? And I know that sounds lame, you know, put it into cooler terms, but basically I found a book that I really, really liked. I read it. I told my friends about it. Some of them are reading it. Not all of them, because, you know, maybe they won't like the book, maybe they don't like the book, maybe they don't have the time, maybe they're not interested, and that's fine. I don't feel rejection at all. All I wanted is at least one person who would read the book and talk to me about the book, see if they thought the same thing. And let me tell you, that book is completely inappropriate. I know I mentioned it before, but it really truly is inappropriate, which is why I can't ask you guys to read it and share the information with you, but I can ask a fellow teacher to read it. And one of them who's reading it is absolutely in love with it. In fact, I think she's really, really excited about this author that I've introduced her to. And so when she's done reading it, we can discuss all of the craziness that went on with that book. And it gives us, you know, some people contact on something that isn't heavy or depressing or whatever. Okay, let me move forward. I know there's a lot of talk and not a lot of lecture that's gone on at this point, but you know, a few minutes of being able to just speak freely to you guys. Oh, got a story for you about the boy. So he's going to be 4 in August. So he's closer to 4 than he is to 3. And you guys know he's smart and quick-witted and sharp as a razor. But he comes up with things that are just like, where did you get that from? So the other day we were in the car and I told him, Eric, I love you so much. You know what he said back to me? No, not I love you too. He said, well then I'm so lucky. I cried a little bit. I did, I can't help it. That was just beautiful and amazing. Then he'll also say things like, I'll say, Eric, get your shoes on so we can go outside and play. And he'll say, what's the point? And I'm like, wow, that's a mood for sure. But, I mean, yeah, what's the point of going outside to play? Like, life has no meaning. He's only going to be 4 in August, guys. He kills me. All right, now the lecture. We are studying genetics. I love teaching genetics. Love teaching meiosis because that helps us understand genetics, and I love teaching genetics because genetics help us understand us and the people around us and the potential for future generations. And I think that is something that's incredible about this particular breed of science. It touches everything from the past to the present to the future. There's so many, many possibilities of how things can work out. It's amazing. So the next 3 lectures or so are going to be focused on learning about how to understand genetics and why it is the way it is, and the way that things lay out, and how you toss the dice when you have children, and how identical twins are identical, and how non-identical twins or paternal twins are not identical, why that happens, how it works. I cannot explain to you exactly why twins occur, specifically identical twins. Nobody at this point, to my knowledge, can. It is something that is just freakish, and it's like you've got this one beautiful zygote, and it breaks up, and then it's like, you know what? I am too much personality for one person. I'm going to be 2 people. We'll talk about that a little more later. There was just some questions that came up that I wanted to touch base with you on. All right, so if you can, have your PowerPoint up with me, and we can discuss all of it together slide by slide, so that way you can feel more comfortable and confident in the content. And as always, if you have any questions, email me or message me on Google Classroom, write it on the stream. The private messages are a little more difficult for me to get to. It's much better if you write it on the stream. Not only that, but other people can hear the questions or read the questions that you ask, and it helps lead them to other questions or clarify their understanding. Okay? All right, guys. So, oh, it's going to be one of these. I need somebody to come click my thingy. Nobody's volunteering? What? All right. So, this is bell work, so we don't need that so much. All right. Genetics. All right, the whole purpose of genetics is to provide you and other living things with the traits that make you, you. That's what genetics essentially is. So, you don't have to read that, but what we want to understand is that we talked about meiosis, and meiosis is the making of your sex cells, right? So you've got 4 haploid cells, and 2 haploid cells have to come together, and it has to be a sperm and an egg. It can't be 2 eggs. The chemicals don't work right. So there's a chemical coating on the ovum, and there's a chemical on the sperm. And the sperm has to dig in through this chemical coating on the ovum, and once one sperm breaches the inner membrane of that ovum, then the ovum's chemical composition completely changes. And all of the sperms that are not yet to the same point as that one sperm, they get killed off with a chemical surge. The one that did breach that last boundary of the ovum releases its genetic information. So it's got, 23 half genes, and then the egg has 23 half genes, and they come together and they make those whole genes. How they mix up, how they randomly assort, how they decide what is going to go into the genetic content of that one sperm or that one egg, all happens during meiosis. Okay? Remember the PMAT with meiosis, you have it twice. So you go prophase to and metaphase, PMAT, prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase, cytokinesis. And you do that when it's up here in prophase 2, and it's separating out the DNA. It's not doubling, so remember it's not doubling, but it's coming here in 1, and then it's breaking apart. So if you had a random assortment of Skittles, okay, and you didn't separate out like here are all the green, here are all the red, here are all the yellow, you just had them all together, and you just took half. Okay, that's random assortment. The genes kind of do the same thing. The only thing that they make sure is that they've got all the proper genetic coding, like they've got all of the information for the ears, they've got all the information for the kneecap, they have all the information for how coarse your hair is going to be, okay? But it's only half a person's information. And then when you combine it together with the other half of the person's information, you get a whole new person with the potential to have all of these different kinds of traits. But the traits are not like spontaneous mutations. You get one gene from the mom and one gene from the dad. And the person who discovered all of this is the father of genetics, Mendel, Gregor Mendel. Okay? He was the one that really put things together. Okay? So the question is, why don't you look like your pet hamster? Well, some of you do, fluffkins. I'm kidding, baby. All right? You get your genes from your mom and your dad, so you're going to look like a combination of your mom and your dad. Some genes are stronger than the others, so you might favor your mom or you might favor your dad more. But it just depends on how that random assortment worked out. So unless you're a hamster, you're not going to look like a hamster. You're going to look like a combination of your mom and your dad. Gregor Mendel was a monk. And for those of you who don't know what a monk is a person, a male, equivalent to a nun, typically Catholic, that has decided that they are not going to live in regular society, that they're going to spend their life worshiping God in seclusion with other people worshiping God. And they call them brothers, and then there's fathers, but the nuns call each other sister and then mother. So it's mirror imaged for male and female, but he was a monk, and he was part of a monk sect that likes, or that really wants to study nature and understand science in the way of how did God provide this for us? How can we understand what God has done? And Mendel was so far ahead of the game, and he had the time and the ability and the skills to perform some genetic experiments to try to understand why we look like a combination of our mothers and our fathers, and why some genes are more prominent than others. Like freckles are dominant. Okay, so if one of your parents has freckles, then there's a really good chance you're going to have freckles. My daughter Draven, she has freckles. Her father did not. My son Eric is too young to actually show any freckling yet, but I'm almost positive he's going to have freckles. Of course, I'm also crazy with the sunscreen, so that might not happen for him. But some people have like a family nose, like this nose that I have. This came from the Mullen side of my family tree, and it's very, very strong. My daughter has the same nose. Eric has a nice blending of Mr. Jackson's nose and my nose. It's not exactly the same. In fact, Mr. Jackson tells me that Eric's nose looks like a little more like the Taggart side of his family. So it just depends on which genes come together and which genes are dominant. I wanted to touch on those words too. So hold up 1 second. In your textbook, the lesson 5, page 1, here we go. You have a list of text, or a list of vocabulary words: heredity, genetics, dominant trait, and recessive trait. And then, if you look lesson 2. Okay, you got jeans. Oh, what did I do? I blame you, Freedom. Okay, so then for this list of vocabulary, you have genes, alleles, phenotype, genotype, homozygous, heterozygous, Punnett square, incomplete dominance, codominance, and polygenic inheritance. Okay, those are really fun words. I want you to try your hand at reading them, okay, and saying them out loud. Okay, let's do it again from gene, allele, phenotype, genotype, homozygous, heterozygous, Punnett square, incomplete dominance, codominance, and polygenic inheritance. And then back to list 1, heredity, genetics, dominant trait, and recessive trait. All right. So those words and those ideas were all founded thanks to Gregor Mendel. We're really, really appreciative of his contributions to science, and we're really appreciative that his monk sect allowed him to do that. Okay. So it's all in your genes. Every gene is the code that provides you with your traits. Okay? Brown eyes are among many options for eye colors, and you get half the code from your mom and half the code from your dad. See, here's one gene, here's the other gene. Okay, one comes from mom, one comes from dad. They come together, and how they align decides what traits you're going to get. Depending on how those codes match up, you may have brown, blue, green, or some other variation of eye color. Eye color is actually controlled by what we know now as 7 different genes. That might change in the future, but as of right now, 7 different genes control eye color. And you can have a whole variety, which is why there are so many differences. Almost no one has the exact same eye color. I did say almost. But it's a really, really neat way. I have another slide that I think comes up in next week's lecture that shows you all the potential outcomes for eye colors given a plethora, and that's I can't even remember now. Multi-hybrid, monohybrid, dihybrid, multi-hybrid Punnett square, which you're going to learn about